This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. A cattle market update from Derrell Peel, Oklahoma State University livestock economist, kicks off today's show. He talks about the record highs in the market and beef production numbers from 2024. Continuing the show is the K-State Forage Quiz Bowl National Champion Team coach Sarah Frye and team members Reese and Quinten Bina to discuss their national win. They explain the competition and what went into their success. Drew Ricketts, K-State wildlife specialist, ends the show by explaining how different wildlife adapt to the colder temperatures. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Monday show with a cattle market update from Oklahoma State University livestock economist Derrell Peel. Derrell, thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Great to be here today.
Derrell, before the interview, you described the markets as being on fire, and what do you mean by that?
January, all of the cattle markets have come out on fire, I guess is a good way. Sometimes we see January a little bit slow till the markets kind of figure out what their pace is coming into the new year, maybe set a tone for the year. Boy, I tell you, this time it appears we've set the tone very, very strong. The markets have all jumped. Feeder cattle markets of all sizes. The fed cattle market reached all of the markets actually have set new record prices in the month of January so far, and we're not done with the month yet. So, this market is really continuing the same thing that we've been on for several months, but I think the market is really reacting even more strongly to the supply fundamentals that are underpinning all of this.
What are those new record prices that we've hit?
For feeder cattle, we're moving up, and so depending on which markets you look at around the country, but you could say a 500-pound steer is approaching, if not at, $4 a pound. 800-pound steers are they're approaching the $3 range, $3 a pound, and fed cattle have gone over $2 a pound. The 5-market fed cattle price has been as high as $2.05. It's over $2, and it's probably going to be over $2 for the foreseeable future here. And all of these markets, again, continue strong, and they're moving towards ever higher levels.
So something you really think we're going to continue to see through quite a bit of the year of 2025 or for the next few months?
Well, seasonality is still important to some extent, even though the market trending up kind of offsets some of that. But, the combination of a strong uptrend and, many of the markets tend to be stronger in the spring. So certainly through the first quarter, we're looking for very strong prices. We might see then, the calves in the second half of the year have some seasonal decrease, but, it's probably going to be less than usual because I think the uptrend is going to offset some of the tendencies for lower seasonal prices later in the year.
And something else holding strong when we look at the cattle market, boxed beef.
Yeah, boxed beef markets have been strong. We finished 2024 very strong with boxed beef prices well above year earlier levels. Came in strong. And it's interesting if you look at that now, at the end of last year, we had very strong seasonal demand for the rib primal, for example. There's a lot of demand for prime rib for Christmas, New Year's, and that was certainly there. As we come into the new year here, the middle meats are holding their own. Tenderloins are actually a little bit lower than a year ago. Ribs are a little bit higher. Strip loins are a little bit higher. But the real strength in this market for several months, and even more so now, has been in the end meats, in particular in the round. And I think that's driven by a strong demand for lean. We're probably seeing more of the round products moving into the grinding market for ground beef. Of course, cow slaughter was way off last year. Non-fed beef production was way off. So another source of lean potentially for that ground beef market would be to grind some of these lean end meats, particularly out of the round.
Derrell, in the past, we've also talked about trade with Mexico and it closing down, and you're saying that maybe that might be changing?
It appears, USDA has, they initially indicated that, the border might reopen to live cattle imports around the 20th of January, so early last week. That didn't happen, I don't believe. They're still working out some of the new procedures and some of the verifications and so on. But it is expected to open up here sometime soon to begin bringing some of those cattle back in. We closed the border right before Thanksgiving last fall. So no trade at the end of the year. We wound up with an annual import total for 2024 that was just about equal to 2023, which means that we were on pace to exceed that had we had that last 5 or 6 weeks of imports. And we didn't get those. Some of those cattle will be held over and will come in eventually. But as more time goes on, those cattle will tend to get absorbed into the Mexican market. And so some of them, may not come depending on how long the border is closed. The border's not going to just jump wide open when it does open. They're going to open, the Texas ports are going to stay closed initially because the inspection facilities are all on the U.S. side. They're trying to keep everything in the Mexican side to make sure those cattle don't have any issues with the screwworm before they come in. So it will come in as a kind of a trickle for a while. It's going to take a while, and that'll kind of set the stage for how much and how fast we see those Mexican cattle imports. It's important to keep in mind, we talk about 1 million to 1.1 to 1.2 million head of Mexican cattle a year coming in. And that sounds like a really big number when you say it in absolute terms. That's about 3.2% of our calf crop. So in the grand scheme, and the closure of the border probably kept out 250,000 head at the end of last year. So we're not talking about the kind of thing that's going to swamp the market when we do open it up. It's not the reason why markets are so strong now. It's not the lack of, it's not the closure of the border that's causing high prices now. And opening the border is not going to be a major impact negatively on the market.
So no really concern that, even though unfortunate, not a big problem for our cattle market?
Not for the total market. Now, obviously, people involved on both sides of the border that are involved in those trades, there's impacts. Obviously, it changes business patterns and so on. But in terms of overall market impacts, I don't expect any major implications.
Derrell, a recent report came out that looked at beef production for 2024 and gave us some of those final numbers. And what were some big points you saw in that?
Yeah, when the final numbers come out on beef production in 2024, we wound up being almost unchanged. It was up 0.1% compared to 2023. If you break that down into fed and non-fed slaughter, so steer and heifer slaughter was actually up combined. Heifer slaughter by itself was down slightly, but steer slaughter was up. So the total steer and heifer slaughter was up, I think, 0.4%. And then, of course, with the heavier carcass weights last year, particularly for steers and heifers, that means that the fed beef production, which is about 85% of the total beef production, was up about 2.8%. The other 15% of beef production is what we would call non-fed beef. That's cow slaughter and bull slaughter. And that was down nearly 12% last year. So when you put it all together, that accounts for this very fractional increase in total beef production. But what it means is that non-fed side, which is really, really key to our ground beef market, is where the biggest tightness is right now. And that goes back to the earlier comments about the demand for lean product coming from the fed side, from the round. Those carcasses are being used over in the ground beef market to provide some additional lean.
Why could there be such a decrease in cow and bull slaughter?
Well, the cow slaughter is coming down. I mean, it's kind of what we would expect as we're moving towards this idea of herd rebuilding. We've had very strong culling rates the last couple of years. We set a record in 2022. Last year's net culling rate, if you look at cow slaughter divided by the cow inventory for beef cows, was about just about average, about the long run average. So coming down from higher than average to an average level, it'll probably continue down as we move towards the idea of herd rebuilding. Culling is going to drop to a minimal level. And of course, the big question last year, which carries over into this year, is when are we going to start saving heifers? And again, we'll have to see what USDA's annual inventory numbers tell us at the end of the month. But It doesn't look like certainly that we did anything last year in 2024, and we may not be set up to do a great deal in 2025.
So really just sitting and waiting and seeing what we might have for 2025, or when we might actually feel some of that herd expansion?
Yeah, we're going to move sideways here on that question. When we do see it, of course, that's going to squeeze things even tighter from a feeder cattle supply standpoint when we start saving those heifers and not sending them all to the feedlot. So that's why we've got these strong prices now. We've got record high prices, and there's every indication that they're going to go higher yet, which is a little bit scary thing for a market analyst to say. Certainly someday we would expect to see a backside to this thing, but that backside is probably 3 or more years out at this point. We're going to continue to see elevated prices for an extended period of time going forward, certainly for 2025.
Derrell, any final thoughts you'd like to share with our cattle producers?
It's an exciting time, kind of scary good in some ways, but really good. Particularly for the cow-calf folks. They're in the driver's seat right now. The market's really rewarding cow-calf production and trying to incentivize rebuilding that herd. Other sectors of the market, there's some margin challenges because most of what the stocker guys are buying is going up farther and faster than what they're selling. And the same is true at the feedlot level. The feeder cattle prices are going up farther and faster than the fed cattle prices, or at least in general, that's the trend in this kind of market. So there'll be some margin challenges for all of those folks above the cow-calf level, and certainly a lot of reason for everybody to do some risk management in a world where we're at record levels, but we're also subject to a tremendous amount of volatility and uncertainty that would come from outside the cattle industry predominantly. So it's important to continue to do risk management.
Derrell, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Happy to do it.
That was Oklahoma State University livestock economist Derrell Peel. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Monday show talking about the national win from K-State's Forage Quiz Bowl team with coach for the K-State Forage Quiz Bowl team, Sarah Frye, Caleb Reese, who's a team member majoring in agronomy, as well as Quinten Bina, who's also majoring in agronomy and agricultural education. Sarah, Caleb, Quinten, thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thank you, Shelby.
Sarah, can you first tell us what is the Quiz Bowl competition when it comes to forage?
Yeah, so the Forage Quiz Bowl competition is hosted by the American Forage and Grassland Council, and it's a Jeopardy-style quiz bowl. So the students get to pick the category. They're given a set of categories and questions, and they get to kind of pick how they want to answer them. So our team this year, they chose to go with a certain strategy of starting with the harder level questions and then moving their way up. And so it's kind of a unique format compared to all the other competition teams that K-State has, in that you have a buzzer, you're trying to beat the other team to see who can answer it fastest and who has the most knowledge.
So really a competition of speed and accuracy?
Yes.
Where was this year's competition held?
So this year it was held in Kissimmee, Florida, so it was kind of a nice getaway, especially when we had just gotten all that snow. So it was kind of a unique trip for our students.
Caleb, Quinten, what was the competition like going to Florida for the national championship?
This one was really interesting. The conference itself is a lot smaller, and so we were able to talk to the other teams the day before. So we actually knew who we were playing against pretty well, which kind of raised the stakes for us a bit. We wanted to kind of be kind to them, but also we wanted to beat them pretty bad. And so some of the competitions we were in the rounds, because it's a tournament style, some of the rounds we went through, we knew who we were going against and kind of felt bad a couple times when we were kind of dominating them, but also it felt good to do that.
Quinten, what about on your side?
Yeah, no, it was really, really fun, especially a part doing the competition. The first round we did really well. I think we played, it was Tennessee, I believe. So we did pretty good that round, but then our second round was against Purdue, and that one, it came down to the wire. It came down to the final Jeopardy question when we had to actually bid some of our points away. But, I mean, while we were doing the competition, I turned to my teammates and I was showing them my hands. My hands were shaking really bad. But we ended up coming together, finding the right answer at the end. We won the second round, went on to win the final round, so it was really fun, really stressful, though.
So how many teams were in this competition?
There was a total of 7 teams, so it was a seven-team single elimination. But to rank us, the students had to do a live plant identification the day before to figure out who knows the plant ID better, and then that ranks you in terms of where you get to play and who plays who.
Are there any prior competitions you have for this before you go to where you were national champions?
No, it's just this one. So the 7 teams over there, the 7 that show up, and we really didn't know who was going to show up until we got there. So that was interesting to see who actually came and who was going to be the best. We seeded second in the plant CID, which meant that we missed out on a bye round for the first round of the tournament. But then we met the team that did seed first in the championship and beat them pretty bad.
How bad did you beat them?
I think it was like 5,000 to, I don't remember what they had. It wasn't very much, though.
I think it ended up being, we had 5,999 because we bid for Final Jeopardy. We bid 1 point at the end. And then I think they had 3,400. So we didn't have to really bid anything at the end. So we kind of bid 1 point and just be funny at the end, I guess.
What are some of the categories and knowledge you have to have going into this?
Yeah, so in the actual game, they give us 6 categories. There's a hay and silage category, a soil fertility, and we were really lucky. We had Molly Kane. She's also on the team, and she's a really big soils person, so she knew all those questions. There was like a plant ID section. We didn't actually ID the plants, but they'll give us the Latin name, and then we'll give them the common name, or they'll describe different characteristics of the plant or where it's grown, and we'll tell what the plant is.
What are all the potential categories that could be pulled from a pool for this competition?
All the categories of the competition are history, establishment, poisons and toxicities, hay and silage, identification, forage quality, soils and fertility, grazing management, and plant physiology.
How do you guys go about preparing for all those different categories?
So we started out we would do presentations. Our practices were Tuesdays kind of after school, and so we'd all meet together and we'd do a presentation, and then later in the semester, we did this all last fall. Later in the semester, we did practice Jeopardy, and so we would all have our own individual buzzers, and we would actually practice the questions. And Sarah had a really good idea to have us write our own questions. And so the questions were ones that we as students had researched and written, and then we were presenting them to our fellow teammates. And so that was a really good way. And then we kind of just reviewed pretty intensely with Dr. Min once he got back. He had been at the conference and knew kind of what we should be looking for and was able to tell us what we needed to know really hard. And so he did a good job of reviewing those with us intensely.
And Quinten, you're team captain of the Forage Quiz Bowl team here at Kansas State University. And what was it like being captain of this team, and who were some of your other team members?
So our other team members, we had Caleb here, Molly Kane, Ashlyn Hartman, Carissa Salm, and those were the ones that went to the competition with us. We did have a few that didn't go to the competition because we had limited funding. We could only bring 5 with us. But what was really cool about our team this year is we had a wide variety of knowledge with us. Like Caleb here, seed quality, foundation seed type stuff, all that stuff he knows really well. Molly knows everything about soils. Ashlyn, she loves herbicides, stuff like that. Chris is just smart in everything. I mean, she's about to graduate college and she's 19 years old. So, I mean, they're such smart people coming together, and we have a wide variety of knowledge. When it comes to being the captain, I think any of us could have been the captain. I mean, I think I was chosen because I had experience doing it in previous years. But just watching, because me and Caleb, we had a little bit more experience with the forage because we took a forage class. So we came into practicing and we knew a little bit more. But I was able to watch everyone study and learn everything about forage. So that was pretty cool, just seeing everyone's knowledge increase doing this competition.
What was it like winning the national championship?
We were all shaking. We were really excited. I think I gave Dr. Min a hug, and I don't think he was expecting that. It was really exciting because we had gone through that second round with Purdue and kind of come down to the wire, and that had shaken us up pretty good. But kind of as we were going through that final round where we got enough points that we knew that no matter what we did, we weren't going to lose, it was a big sigh of relief. We all were just kind of just able to look around, enjoy the moment, and have a lot of fun. And then, shaking hands with everybody, the judges and everybody afterwards. It was a really good feeling.
Sarah, what was it like from the coach's perspective?
It was good, watching them and seeing like how far they had studied and making sure like, that they knew what they were supposed to know. It was also like really exciting, like, because I could see the scoreboard, and so like I was watching how many points were left on the board, so it was kind of fun to just be like, okay, they got this, like, they don't need to worry, they don't need to stress anymore. So it was kind of nice to just be able to sit back and relax and watch them enjoy the last few moments of the contest.
How will you guys apply this knowledge and work that you've put into this contest to your future, hopefully?
Yeah, so when I graduate, I plan on doing a master's here at K-State in agronomy. At the end of the day, I want to be a professor in agronomy. So doing these competitions really, I don't want to say forces me to study, because I really do enjoy studying, but it gives me more incentive to study and to compete and to meet a lot of great people. I really think that doing these competitions, it's going to increase my knowledge and make me a better teacher at the end of the day.
Yeah, networking is one of the biggest things from these competitions. But for me personally, I hope to go back to a farm. I'm not sure which farm yet, but to have this knowledge of how to integrate stuff that we learn, how to integrate animals into our production systems, because agronomy teaches us a lot about plants, but with the forage, we have to consider the animals that are eating those plants. And so we have to really consider how those animals are affected, and then in turn how we are affected by the economics of everything. It's really, really beneficial to our knowledge.
Sarah, if people are wanting to find out more information about the Forage Quiz Bowl team here at K-State, is there a way they can do that?
We do have a little bit of information on the K-State Agronomy website, and then I believe we've posted things about the AFGC conference, and so they could go there as well, just to learn about the conference itself and what they offer to students and faculty and producers as well.
Sarah, Caleb, Quinten, I appreciate you all taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was coach for the K-State Forage Quiz Bowl team, Sarah Frye, and she was joined by team members Caleb Reese, who's majoring in agronomy, and Quinten Bina, who's majoring in agronomy and agricultural education, and was also the team captain of this year's Forage Quiz Bowl national team. If you'd like to learn more about Forage Quiz Bowl or Forage at K-State, you can do so by going to the Department of Agronomy's website. That link is www.agronomy.k.su.edu. I will link it in today's show notes on agtoday.net. Also in today's show notes will be a link to a press release if you'd like to read more about this team. You can find that for yourself if you'd like to by going to www.ksre.ksu.edu. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but when we come back, we'll be joined by K-State wildlife specialist Drew Ricketts as he explains to us how different wildlife adapt to winter conditions. We're now cutting to that short break. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Monday show talking about winter survival adaptations for wildlife with K-State wildlife specialist Drew Ricketts. Drew, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shelby.
Drew, this topic of conversation really came up because I asked about maybe a bird being a little extra chunky this time of year.
Yeah, and when it's really cold like this, we oftentimes see critters doing behaviors or using physiological adaptations to stay warm. And what you probably saw is something that a lot of people are probably seeing in this cold right now, and that's what we call piloerection, which is a really fancy word that basically is the same thing as us getting goosebumps. So in mammals, we would see the hair stand on end. In birds, we see the feathers fluff up or ruffle up. And that just increases the insulative value because there's a whole lot more air trapped inside those feathers up against the body.
What are some other things that wildlife might be doing with their hair or feathers?
Well, as far as the hair and feathers go, if we're thinking about the insulation, just really the way that they grow, the different types of hair and feathers that one animal can have really increases their insulative properties. So we usually see either down on a bird or underfur on a mammal up close to the body that's much more fluffy and soft and traps air, whereas we see guard hairs on a mammal or, those tougher flight type feathers on the outside of a bird that are more protective. We also see birds preen and mammals groom a lot. And when they're doing that, they're basically making sure that they're keeping their hair or their feathers in good shape. They're also oftentimes applying oils that are secreted by glands on their body that will waterproof the feathers or the hair on those critters. And then there's even some birds that have some really specialized feathers, like doves are a good example of this. The feathers sort of disintegrate into a powder, and that helps to waterproof their feathers as well.
What are they doing with possibly their legs?
Yeah, so that's something that folks are probably seeing if they're around waterfowl. There's several different things that we see there. So one of them is there's not much tissue inside the feet or the legs. So they do what we call countercurrent exchange with their circulation of blood so that cold blood that's in their feet and legs doesn't come back and really mix with the warm blood in their body. So they're able to keep that cold blood outside and stay warm. They'll also pull their feet or their leg maybe one at a time up to their body so that their feathers underneath of them are insulating that foot and leg. They'll also sometimes just sit down on the snow or the ice to accomplish that same thing for both legs at a time. Another thing that we can see with those birds is where a goose or a duck or other birds may turn their head all the way around and shove their bill underneath the feathers on their back. And when they're doing that, they're using the feathers back there to insulate their bill, and it's also allowing them to breathe that air that's trapped against their body that's pre-warmed. And so it makes that respiration process more efficient and allows them to not be breathing cold air in that's going to cool their body off.
What are some more maybe extreme winter survival things that wildlife do?
Well, really the most extreme thing that you can do to survive the winter is just totally leave and get away from the winter. So we see lots of birds and a few mammals that will migrate to warmer areas where they can get away from the conditions. Of course, this uses a whole lot of resources. So that's something that they have to be really adapted to do. Also hibernating. So staying in the same place, but getting away from that cold by maybe going down into the ground. A less extreme version of hibernating is what we would call winter torpor. So in hibernation, their heart rate slows down and their breathing slows down so much that it's just incredible, and their body temperature can get down to almost freezing. With torpor, everything slows down, their body temperature reduces, but it's not nearly as extreme. Hunkering down is even less extreme than hibernation. So, Shelby, what'd you do when it stormed really bad that first night?
Stayed inside.
You stayed inside, right? And maybe had a cup of warm cocoa by the fire. These critters are doing the same thing. They're hunkering down. They're finding cavities in trees, really dense grass if it's like a ground bird or a coyote or something like that, using that for insulation. I also got lots of pictures of bird poop in doorways where small birds were sort of hunkering down in those doorways and using that to stay warm during that cold period too.
That was K-State wildlife specialist Drew Ricketts. That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.